Today I would like to talk about how the coronavirus and our reaction to that will affect the world economy, your country's economy and your economy. The summary is potentially very much. So let's explain productivity. We hear a lot about working from home as if this is some kind of solution to this problem. It's a small solution. So working from home an odd day, one day here, one day there, that's fine, because when you need access to your colleagues, most of them will be in the office the day you're coming back in. Access to the colleagues is needed to get answers, and we have found that people working from home for longer periods of time tend to change their ambition level, especially when it comes to making guesses. You sit at home, you don't know how to get an answer, and net result is you make guesses and more mistakes. Motivation is another thing. Most people are in need of seeing other grown-up people. If you're sitting alone at home for weeks at end, you get demotivated. Another problem with working from home is that people are not used to having the brain sharp with the bad air that we have in homes today, with all the traffic noise that is in the daytime where many people are living, all the kids that will be at home, pets that will be disturbing. It takes a lot of training to be able to be productive at home. So then there is all the access to printed material, unless you have gone fully digital in your office. You need to go to the office to look at original documents, to sign documents, and this is just not ready for the majority of the offices. They cannot do this. So massive productivity will be lost. We're talking about 80% on average of productivity for companies that attempt all their staff working from home, and that's not taking into consideration that they might be sick at the same time. So if you get sick, or you have to stay at home to take care of a sick relative, or you have to stay home and take care of your children who are no longer allowed to go to school, who pays your salary? Well, there are four basic options. Either you pay, which will quickly lead to you running out of savings, thinking 2 months at home. Most families cannot handle that. Second option is insurance companies. As we have seen with the airline industry, they are not too keen to pay for anything to do with coronavirus. Third option is the employers, and we have seen in the last few days several countries, the UK included, making big statements that employers should pay for this. Well, most employers don't have money enough for this and will go bankrupt if they had to do that, and then we end up in an even worse situation economically. And the fourth option is the state. If you ask me, several countries will take this opportunity and introduce citizen salary. Our worldwide economy is consumption driven. We don't often think about that, but we can't produce much more than we consume. We have three types of consumption: private consumption, things like food, clothes, tourism. We have state consumption, things like healthcare, roads. Some countries, they pay for universities. And we have military consumption that sadly is a very big part of what we produce on the planet. So when we have a major disturbance in both consumption and production at the same time, there will be knock-on effects, very serious knock-on effects, and I'll take a couple of industries to pieces to show how that can work. Tourism. Tourism comes in two flavors. Local tourism, as in you take your car and you drive from Boston to Utah. And we have long-haul tourism where people go on a jet plane and go to Thailand, or from China to France, or from England to the United States. This tourism is affected by insurance, and the insurance companies have made it very clear that they are not interested in paying insurance for people that get coronavirus or any problems related to coronavirus when they're in the wrong country. So tourism is taking a major hit already now, and it will go down. Long-haul tourism will go down for half a year to a year to very low levels. This has very sad effects on the airline industry, both charter and regular. Lufthansa made it known that out of their 750 aircraft, 150 are now long-term parked. This is just the beginning. I'd be very surprised if we have more than 10% of the regular air traffic flying in 2 months' time. There will be some military that are flying regular, some officials, and some extra insured businessmen. But almost all air travel will stop because you fly to other countries and then your insurance isn't valid anymore. Obviously, most of the tourist destinations, the restaurants, the hotels, the tour operators, they're privately owned. So half a year to a year, with maybe half the business gone or more, this will cause these companies to go bankrupt, and many of the staff will have to find other jobs, and it will not be that easy to stand up again after the corona year. Business travel is also very dependent on insurance. In almost all countries it is illegal to send someone on a business trip without them being fully insured, and now the insurance companies have said that they're not covering any costs that are corona related. Another industry that will be hard hit is events industry. Many countries have already outlawed or banned events like concerts. Some countries have banned restaurants. We have banned political meetings, even parliament meetings around the world. All sorts of situations where people come together and we're risking contagion. These bans will continue until most people have had the virus and the survivors can start. Obviously, any private company involved in this serving events will be extremely hard hit. Banks. Well, our banks will be very, very hard hit with bankrupt companies and non-liquid companies. The banks will change what they do and demand back any loan they can. If they think you will survive without their money, they will demand the short-term loan back. They will also be hard hit with having to write down their assets. Clearly the countries can make emergency laws that allows the bank to continue functioning, but during the Spanish flu, the big recession, we weren't ready. And the same thing with the previous banking crises. A lot of banks will be very, very tough on money, and that in turn will cause bankruptcies and a lot of unemployment. Complex production. Well, we have a very serious problem with that some factories are closing altogether. In the beginning it is for protection of their staff, maybe because the government has ordered them to stay shut, maybe because not enough many can find transport to get to the factory. This means that components for more complex things, let's say we're building a Mercedes car, there are thousands of components made by thousands of companies in a Mercedes. And if a few of them are missing, the production has to stop because the thing can't be used. But the big number of components, there is one supplier, and if that component is missing, the car doesn't work and is undeliverable. But it's not only the components, the production lines are also highly specialized today. If we look at the work floor, maybe there are 3 welders in a big factory. If all 3 of them are sick in one day or missing because they have to take care of children or just unable to get to the factory, there is no welding. You can't take someone from bookkeeping department to do the welding. You can't take even someone that does the cables just after the welding and say you weld today. It's a specialized job and you need training for it. Now, all through the whole factory floor today, workers are specialized. This means that the production is highly vulnerable to disturbances. And we know from other years that the 1 or 2 months the flu is at the worst, we get production disturbances. This time we're talking about more than 10 times more disturbances, maybe entire closures. So the factory floor is very, very sensitive today. But it's also dependent on the other departments. Planning, purchasing, invoicing, shipping, packaging. All of these things need to work for a factory to be able to produce at full volume, and there is very little margin for people being sick. And definitely not 1/3 or so of the factory staff and the office staff. Raw material production is very sensitive when times get worse, and we will see bankruptcies of mines, of chemical factories, because they are no longer competitive. Only the most profitable ones in the best run countries will survive, and it might be years until we reach the same raw material usage in our economy as we used to have just before the coronavirus. So what about agriculture? Isn't that safe? Well, not really. Today agriculture in most countries is very dependent per farm on a small number of workers. And if they get sick 2 months in a row, whatever grows in the field dies, or at least a lot less is produced. And we don't have a system, well, possibly exception of China, where we can send military or students out in the fields to help. They need to know what they're doing, otherwise they will just trample the wheat and the carrots and whatever it is we're growing. So food production might get a pretty hard hit. How much money can the state spend? Well, we get a couple of new extra costs here because of Corona. The healthcare will require billions of extra in resources to create more beds for the people that go into critical stage, and new types of services. Enormous amount of more tests will be done to get this under control. These billions need to come from somewhere. At the same time, someone will have to pay for sick leave. Likely the states, the countries will have to pay for that. So this comes out of the state budget, and the state budget can be beefed up by taxing people more, which is not really going to work this year. So they will print money that will cause inflation or possibly even hyperinflation. In summary, there are very few parts of our economy that won't be severely affected by the fear and the production stops and the attempts to work from home. It's almost impossible to get any sort of correct numbers from this. You have to make an educated guess. My educated guess is that we'll lose 50% or slightly more of world production this year.